Good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, we're going to talk to Buzz Patterson. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, pilot in the United States Air Force, and get his impression of how it is that we could lose an F-35, lose track of an F-35. You see this story developing today? That the United States Marine Corps has lost track of an F-35 after a pilot ejected during what they're referring to as a mishap. These are amazing jets, by the way, these F-35s. It really modern marvels of technology, and they'd better be for the cost that we're spending on them. It's like something $75, $80 million to build each one of these things, and they can do remarkable things. They have these over-the-horizon capabilities where they can shoot down planes. Nobody wants to get into a dogfight with the United States, not with tech like this. They can shoot down other jets before that jet even knows that we are in the air. A human eye can't see as far as these jets can detect. Pretty amazing. Also, I got a chance once to, kind of get some of the Lockheed Martin propaganda on this, but I went and I tried their the helmet. They have like a simulator for it, so you can try the helmet to see what it's like inside the cockpit of the F-35. And holy cow, that's neat. It is really cool you take the helmet, you put it on. It's got video screens inside the lens of your goggles, essentially. And you look down through the plane itself because as you're flying, they've got cameras all around the plane so you can see in every direction. So you know how, like in a car, you have blind spots? No blind spots in the F-35. You have full, like, 3-axis views of everything. You can see in complete 3D, just everything around you. Amazing. Anyway, so really, really cool technology. But a U.S. fighter jet's stealth abilities, NBC says very cheekily, appear to be working too well. Authorities have been forced to ask the public for help finding an F-35 that went missing somewhere over South Carolina when the pilot ejected because of a mishap. Joint Base Charleston, an air base in North Charleston, said it was working with Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort to locate an F-35 that was involved in a mishap Sunday afternoon. That's euphemism for went missing. The pilot was able to safely eject from the aircraft, an F-35B Lightning II jet, and was taken to a local medical center in stable condition, they said in a Facebook post around 5:35 yesterday evening. The 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, the jet belongs to one of the unit's training squadrons, confirmed Sunday's mishap and that the pilot had safely ejected from the aircraft. Quote, the search and recovery efforts for the aircraft are ongoing, and we are thankful to the agencies assisting in this effort. Captain Joe Leitner, the spokesperson, that's a spokesman, by the way, for the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing said. The mishap is currently under investigation. Okay. So we'll talk to a pilot coming up on this subject and see if we can get some more answers on all of this. Let me get back for a moment to Donald Trump's interview on Meet the Press. And, of course, you can join us, as always, at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. You just heard a moment ago Kristen Welker saying there's no evidence that Joe Biden was involved in Hunter's business dealings. That is, first of all, that is such a lie. You don't have to know that much about this story to know that Joe Biden was, quote, involved in his son's business dealings. How many business dinners did Joe show up at with business partners? At least 2 that are on the record, at least 2, at Cafe Milano right here in Washington, D.C. How often did business partners pose with Joe for photos? A lot. That happened a lot. A lot. How often did Joe get on phone calls? According to on-the-record testimony, under oath testimony, constantly. It was considered Hunter Biden's party trick. Joe Biden was intimately involved in advancing the financial fortunes of his family by allowing Hunter to use Joe as his access to the government and its resources. So this whole idea, Kristen Welker sitting there going, oh, well, there's no evidence of this. Trump's like, what are you talking about? There's all sorts of evidence for this. All sorts. Meanwhile, another piece of this interview that I want to focus on is Trump's answers on abortion. Now, Kristen Welker, I should point out here, there's not a single topic she spent more time on than her enthusiasm for aborting babies. That was the number one topic for her in terms of time spent. Like I said, I watched this whole interview. It's like an hour and a half long. She spent endless time on how many more abortions can we achieve? How many more can we get? What are you going to do to protect abortion, Donald Trump? It was over and over and over again. So here, I want to play some of Trump's answers here because they're not all getting the coverage they deserve. Here's Trump saying, look, Democrats are super radical on this, including Kristen Welker, obviously.
The radical people on this are really the people, the Democrats, that say after 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and even after birth, you're allowed to terminate the baby.
Democrats aren't saying that. I just have to. Democrats are not saying that.
Of course they do.
Democrats are not saying that, she says. She says without evidence, Democrats are not saying that. So Trump, good for him, cites the facts.
You have a Virginia governor, previous governor, who said after the baby is born,
Ralph Northam,
you will make a determination, and if you want, you will kill that baby. The baby is now born.
Democrats writ large are not talking about that.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Did you hear that move? Wait a second. Mr. President, Democrats writ large are not talking about that. Did you hear the goalposts just get ripped out of the field and taken outside the stadium? So he points to an actual Democrat with a high profile, the governor of Virginia. This became a huge deal in the election between Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin.
Will make a determination, and if you want, you will kill that baby. The baby is now born.
Democrats writ large are not talking about that. Only 1% of late-term abortions happen in always in the state of
They are
crisis.
the radical people.
Okay, so Trump's totally right there. So that clip deserves a lot more attention than it's getting this afternoon, today, which is zero. It's getting zero attention, that aspect. Now, what is getting a lot of attention is Donald Trump said, in the way that he does, that he's going to come up with a broad agreement that, quote, both sides are going to like, that the abortion enthusiasts and the pro-life people are all going to like this. Whatever the plan is, it's going to be great for everybody. And he went on to attack Ron DeSantis for signing a 6-week abortion ban in Florida.
I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake.
A terrible thing and a terrible mistake, says Donald Trump. For more on this, I want to bring in Abby Johnson. She's a former Planned Parenthood Clinic Director turned pro-life activist who joins us now. Abby, good to have you with us.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Okay, let's talk. There's a lot to talk about with regards to abortion today, but let's start with this answer from Donald Trump. Trump takes a shot at Ron DeSantis and says that he thinks it was terrible that DeSantis signed into law this piece of legislation that protected children from the moment that their heartbeat's detected. What do you think?
I mean, I think his answer is terrible. And I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. Protecting babies. I mean, I believe we should be protecting babies from the moment of conception. Protecting babies at 5 and 6 weeks in the womb is an excellent step forward in protecting them from the moment of conception. So, the fact that he ran on a pro-life platform and has touted himself as the most pro-life president and then turns around a few years later and says that protecting babies from the moment a heartbeat is detected is a terrible mistake and a terrible thing to do is absolutely ridiculous and makes him seem like a phony when it comes to the pro-life issue. And this is the first time in the past few months that he has come across this way. I mean, he has essentially said that, anybody who believes in the right to life from the moment of conception is the problem, that we were the reason that, good conservatives lost the midterms, which was not true. The reason conservatives lost the midterm was because they picked poor candidates. It had nothing to do with the pro-life vote. But Donald Trump is sort of showing his true colors here and doesn't seem to be coming down on the side of life. And I got to tell you, this is going to alienate a lot of voters.
I think if you take the long view on Donald Trump, you can kind of detect that this has never been an issue that's been that important to him in terms of just like fighting for life. I think what he recognized was that there was a massive constituency for it, and he took a hold of it. I mean, remember, he spoke at the March for Life. He gave a very powerful speech on behalf of life during that speech. He's talked in the past. He got into trouble with the media when he was talking about how it's murder and that we got to, it's maybe mothers who murder their kids should be held accountable. And then he kind of walked that back. And then, of course, he did put in position these great Supreme Court justices that overturned the abomination that was Roe v. Wade. And it's the kind of thing that I'd be encouraging him to take a victory lap on. This is a big deal. This is what people who've been fighting for life have been fighting for a very long time. I just think this is one of those moments where his lack of conviction on this issue in particular is kind of exposing itself.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I mean, I haven't been impressed with Trump, for quite a while. All the name calling, just his childish rhetoric I've had just about enough of it. But this in particular, he told everybody he was going to defund Planned Parenthood during his presidency. Planned Parenthood was funded at historical rates during his presidency.
Is that true? Historic rates?
Yeah, that's true. He not only didn't defund them, but he actually funded them at incredible rates. He didn't do anything to knock down their funding. He made this big grandstanding decision to defund their Title X program, which is actually that's like one of the smallest pots of money that they have. It really does nothing to them. But yet their Title 19 money, their traditional Medicaid money, came in at historical rates.
Yeah.
He could have stopped that, but he didn't. Not only that, but he was the one that ushered in all of this COVID nonsense that we had to deal with. He's the one that ushered in the COVID vaccine, which we know is killing people. And he won't, he'll never come forward and say, what, guys, that was a mistake. He continues to make excuses about that and won't take accountability because I don't believe his ego will allow him to come forward and say, what, guys, I was wrong on that. That was the wrong thing to do. He keeps passing the blame.
So Abby, a couple other things here that I think are worth reflecting on. I do think overturning Roe v. Wade counts as a major victory here, and he spoke of that as the kind of thing that he thought would be accomplished, and it certainly was by his Supreme Court justices. And it's when that decision came down, I played the national anthem to open the show. I thought it was such a great moment in our country's history, and I was very grateful for that. Some of the other big pieces were, the Mexico City policy, which he expanded, that prevented using a lot of these taxpayer resources around the planet to advance the death of these babies. So in that sense,
let me be clear. That is a ping pong ball that goes back and forth no matter who's in office. So that's not just a Trump thing. That's every single Republican president. As soon as they become president, Mexico City policy is in play.
Sure.
So that's not just a Trump thing. That's a Reagan thing.
But what I mean by that, though, is it kind of gets to kind of the mixed bag that we're talking about. There are areas where that's very disappointing. The idea that you would increase funding to Planned Parenthood, just awful. But at the same time, massive victories on some of these issues involving life, which is, so in other words, like his record's been very, I would say, mixed on this subject.
Yeah, it has been mixed. And now, though, I feel like, he's kind of coming out and saying, well, it's terrible. It's murder if you're killing a baby in the 5th and 6th month.
Right.
But, to heck with them if they're in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th month. Well, look, he's actually out here saying that he's willing to compromise with Democrats. Well, let me make something clear. We should never be compromising on murder. At what other time are we out here saying, it's okay to murder if you just murder like one person. But, if you do it like 2 or 3 people, that's not okay.
Right.
No, we should never be compromising with murder. And, I was a long-time Democrat, right? When I worked at Planned Parenthood, when I ran a Planned Parenthood clinic, I was definitely a Democrat. I worked for Hillary Clinton's campaign. But there is never a time when a Democrat is going to compromise with you on abortion, because the Democratic platform is to expand abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, yes, and for that abortion procedure to be provided for and paid for by the taxpayer. There's never going to be a time where a Democratic candidate or a Democratic congressperson is going to say, Trump, you're right. I'm going to be okay with banning abortion at 15 weeks. After 15 weeks.
Right.
You're never going to find a Democrat to get on board with that. The Democratic Party is accessible abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, and it's going to be taxpayer funded. So the fact that Donald Trump is out here saying he's going to compromise on murder with the Democratic Party, not only is it foolish, but it is never going to happen. We do not compromise with murderers. That's ridiculous.
Abby Johnson, thank you very much, as always, for your enthusiasm for an important issue and your thoughts today. Really appreciate it. You know, the latest kind of glancing blow off of Ron DeSantis, not really a glancing blow, it just smacked him. He's like, hey, this is terrible what DeSantis signed on to. That's what Trump says. This heartbeat ban, saying that you can't abort kids that have heartbeats. Stop. Trump says it's terrible. But you know what Trump does with all of his Republican opponents? He's always done this. He'll just take like whatever attack he sees out there and he'll pick it up and just use it as a cudgel. Like if he hears the left saying, DeSantis sucks on abortion, blah, 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 he'll pick it up and be like, hey, DeSantis sucks on abortion. He'll just repeat it, you know? And it's happened before. Remember when DeSantis did that thing with AP African-American history where he made it literally better? The left was like, he's trying to stop kids from learning about slavery. Of course, he wasn't. He wasn't doing any such thing. He was actually making it a lot better and getting rid of the Marxism that the left was injecting into the course. Trump's campaign picked up the cudgel. They were like, yeah, he's trying to stop people from learning about slavery. But stop. Okay, will you stop, please? You have a good record you can reflect on. You have a perfectly good rationale for why you're running for president again. We're looking at a completely unfair system. It's tilted against the American people. You have 2 tiers of justice. I mean, you've got a great case to make, but it's always been Trump's style. Remember, he accused Ted Cruz's father of being a part of JFK's assassination at one point. Hey, this looks like a useful weapon. He picks it up, and then he starts wielding it. Now Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are like best of friends or something. Or at least that's the way they act in public. Coming up, Buzz Patterson is going to join us. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, pilot in the United States Air Force. We're going to find out from him what it takes to lose an $80 million jet. Good afternoon to you on a busy Monday. Good to have you with us. 5:36 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're always making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The United States military has lost track of an $80 million piece of equipment known as an F-35. A U.S. fighter jet is missing. It went missing somewhere over South Carolina. It was a Marine Corps-controlled jet, Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort. Joint Base Charleston is an air base in North Charleston, said it was working with Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort to locate an F-35 that was involved in a mishap Sunday afternoon. According to NBC's report, the pilot was able to safely eject from the aircraft, which is an F-35B Lightning II jet, and was taken to a local medical center in stable condition, they said in a Facebook post yesterday. They are asking for the public's help in locating the jet. What is happening here? Let's bring in a guy who's got plenty of time in the air on behalf of the United States military. Lieutenant Colonel Buzz Patterson, retired U.S. Air Force veteran and former carrier of the nuclear football as well, joins us on the phone. Buzz, great to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, my pleasure, Vince. How you doing?
Good. This is a bizarre story, isn't it? What do you make of this? That a pilot ejects and now the jet's gone?
Yeah, man. I've been flying for 35 years. 20 years in the Air Force, and then 16 commercially. And I can't imagine, this has never happened in my lifetime. I can't imagine, and I'm also very familiar with that area. I was stationed at Charleston, Joint Base Charleston, back in those days, Charleston Air Force Base, for 5 years back in the 80s. So I know the terrain. I know the lakes that they're possibly looking at, Lake Moultrie and Lake Marion, or just north of the Air Force Base there. And it was a Marine jet out of Beaufort and doing a training with another Marine jet. So here, I have never seen or heard of an ejection procedure where the other jet in the formation, there were two F-35s, didn't track the aircraft all the way down to the ground. So normally they make sure that their buddy's okay, and then they press on and stay behind the other airplane until it crashes. So I don't know what the Marine Corps policies are, but that's what we do in the Air Force.
So the normal procedure would be that the second jet would follow the plane as it goes down.
That's exactly right. You stay in touch with it. You try to make sure it doesn't hit any populated areas or, God forbid, cities or towns. So that's why the wingman, or in this case the lead, I think, that ended up being the guy that survived. So he should have followed the other jet all the way to completion.
So strange.
And there's not a lot of gas on those jets, so I can't imagine that it would have gone very far. But in today's day and age, Vince, like, you know, those airplanes have transponders on them that talk to the ground, that talk to the FAA constantly. The FAA is watching it on radar constantly.
Yes.
You just can't disappear like that. I've never heard this kind of thing happening before.
It's amazing, isn't it? So, and my impression, sir, is that these jets are some of the most advanced technology that humanity's ever come up with. Like I almost think that it'd be possible to fly this thing remotely. It's that technologically advanced. How different are these jets from anything else we've ever seen?
Well, they're the best, the state of the art right now. You know, I've never flown the F-35. I'd love to. But I flew earlier versions of jets that we didn't have quite the technology we do today. They can be controlled remotely, and I mean, you can't control an ejection remotely, but you can basically follow the airplane everywhere it goes, and you know exactly where it's going. You should, in any way. And the other thing I think is really shocking, Vince, is the fact that the Marine Corps just came out today, and they're going to have a international stand down for 2 days.
Yes.
So there's going to be no flying whatsoever for the Marine Corps the next 2 days. That is highly unusual in and of itself. So something's going on below the surface here. It's not just a case of a missing jet. I think something else is happening. I don't want to speculate, but there's no way in my mind we don't know where that airplane went.
This so the report here: all Marine Corps aircraft inside and outside the United States were grounded today. After the disappearance of that F-35, according to an order issued by General Eric Smith. He's the acting commandant of the Marine Corps. Marine aircraft deployed abroad or with imminent missions can delay the order briefly, but are expected to stand down for 2 days this week. The Pentagon saying in a statement that the pause in operations will allow units, quote, to discuss aviation safety matters and best practices. Marine leadership will use the stand down, quote, to ensure the service is maintaining operational standardization of combat-ready aircraft with well-prepared pilots and crews. We've seen incidents before where very expensive machinery crashes. I'm thinking of the Osprey. The Osprey has had a number of training accidents and a number of deaths associated with it. They don't normally give a stand down to the entire Marine Corps, though.
They don't. That's the thing that's really peculiar, because I mean, I can see them doing a stand down on the F-35. I mean, if they believe there was some kind of maintenance malfunction or there's some kind of system problem that they had, you know, previously not diagnosed, I can see them putting the F-35s on stand now. But the entire Marine Corps aviation fleet, that is highly unusual. And I mean, this is a conversation for another day. But if it is training and if it is maintenance on these jets, then we're talking about the damage that's been done to our Pentagon and our military politically over the last few years. And that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, if the Marine Corps is having a training issue or a maintenance issue, it's going to go right back to the Pentagon, and the priorities that, in my opinion, in my estimation, we have chosen are not the priorities we should be choosing for a healthy U.S. military.
Well, it also seems that my impression has always been that in aviation, safety is everything. I feel like you can't take off in an airplane if one of the tray tables don't work. They're like, well, we got to stay here on the tarmac for half an hour until that tray table gets fixed. And you're like, really? We're drilled down all the way to the tray tables? Probably not the tray tables, but the idea is that safety seems paramount in all of this. Buzz Patterson, can you talk about what it's like to be a military pilot and how much that's drilled into your head?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, that's why you train. I mean, the training that's what these guys were doing. They were training. The training is extensive, you know, and the standards are typically, in my experience, have been very, very high for U.S. military aviation across all the services, not just Air Force or Marines, you know, but also the Army and the Navy. So it's typically been fantastic. I do have friends that are still active, and they have been reporting that the training aspect has been lacking over the last few years, and again the priorities have shifted to the wrong things. So if we do find out that this was in fact a training issue, and I hope it's nothing more than that. I just hope that they do find the jet eventually, and that, you know, the pilot that punched is okay.
Yeah,
apparently he is, and that the Marine Corps can get down to the bottom of this. But Other than yet, there's been a lot of nefarious reports about the guy, the airplane making it all the way to Havana. That's entirely not feasible. There's not enough gas in the airplane to get that far south. So,
interesting. And an ejection's a big deal, obviously. I mean, you're sacrificing the plane. I assume if you eject, you believe the plane is gone. It's done. But you're doing it to save your own life. What do you make of the fact that he ejected here? I'm not seeing much coverage as to why he ejected. I just see a lot of coverage of the plane was in autopilot as he ejected. So what does that mean to you?
And it means to me that maybe it was premature. The fact that he ejected with the airplane on autopilot. You're supposed to eject when there's imminent threat to your life, to your life.
Yes.
And if he ejected and the airplane kept flying, he might have ejected prematurely. I mean, we're also assuming it's a he. It might have been a she or whatever.
Right.
But I'm just going to go ahead and assume he. And I mean, if he punched out of a perfectly good airplane, that is not a good thing to have happen. And if the airplane kept flying, it sounds like it's probably a pretty good airplane. So there's those aspects of it. So I'm sure they'll look into it. But this is really unusual, and I can't imagine. Again, I think I posted this on Twitter last night. But I've been flying 35 years, and I'm an older guy, and I have never heard of us ever losing an airplane anywhere in the world. A military airplane, much less right over South Carolina, where we have thousands of Air Force and Navy folks stationed.
Yes, the Carolinas have a lot of air bases down there, and an ejection. I assume you hadn't. Did you ever have to eject out of a plane, Buzz, by any chance?
No, I never had to. I mean, we practice it when you go through pilot training, and you do the simulated ejections. But no, I never had to. Thank God.
Yeah,
I did have quite a few of my squadron mates over the years have to do it.
Wow. I mean, so that must be a very violent experience, though. I realize the ejection is like the way to give yourself some safety, but my impression is that there's a high probability of a mishap in an ejection, even if everything else seems like it's going correctly.
Well, the nice thing about the newer jet, the F35, is the ejection systems have been so much more enhanced. The things that I was flying back in the 80s, I mean, you were going to eject and you were probably going to live, but it was really going to hurt, and depending on how fast you were going. But the ejection seats have come a long way, and it's relatively easy now to eject and live through it. I mean, it's probably scary as hell, and I really wouldn't want to do it. But if I thought I had to, I definitely would. And guys do it. And again, I just don't know. We'll have to get this guy, the pilot's, his impressions, what was happening. What was he telling his wingman? What was the emergency that caused him to want to leave the airplane? Right. And that'll probably get to what really actually happened.
By the way, I was just sent a link, and this may help explain why the Marine Corps is doing a service-wide stand down at the moment on flights, because it was just a couple weeks ago that at least 3 Marines were killed in an Osprey crash in Australia. So there's been a series of accidents in just the last few weeks where people were killed, or in this case, a Marine was able to eject and survive that experience, but they lost the jet. But I would guess at this moment that senior leaders in the Marine Corps are suddenly a bit panicked about all of these flight mishaps.
Yeah, they should be probably, and again, I think it's going to go to training or the lack thereof, and also potentially maintenance on the airplanes. And as a pilot, the guys that get in a cockpit are 100% dependent on the guys that are turning the wrenches on the airplanes on the ground. And you always expect and pray that you're going to have 100% functional airplane, and sometimes you don't get that. Yeah. So there could be some more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. Buzz Patterson, thank you very much. Retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force, pilot. He's done it all. Thank you, sir. Very much appreciate your analysis today.
You bet, Vince. Anytime. Take care.
Good to talk to you. Let me head to the phones here. I've got Drew calling in from Annandale now on line 1. Drew, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
This has been a really fascinating thing about the F-35 going missing, but there's actually a precedent for this. Back in 1970, during an Air Force training exercise, a guy was flying an F-106 Delta Dart, and he ejected out of the aircraft, and the aircraft continued to fly and then they had to put a search out for this thing, and it landed by itself, almost with very minor damage, in a Montana cornfield. So there's actually a precedent for, after ejection, having an aircraft go flying by itself and ending up someplace intact.
You know, I saw some people sharing this today on social media. I saw the picture you're referring to because there's a photo of this jet sitting in a cornfield. Yeah, it's amazing. So it sounds to me like it just kept flying in something of a straight line, like a paper airplane, and had a gentle landing in a cornfield. Yeah,
pretty much. I think it's actually in a museum because it's a remarkable thing. There's all kinds of articles about this kind of thing, but when I heard about this today, I'm going like, that sounds a lot like that F-106 thing,
sure,
from like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So again, it's just people are saying, this normally doesn't happen. Usually there's a smoking hole, but but this, I hope they find this thing. That's an awful expensive piece of hardware to go missing.
Yes, it is. And we've got a lot of people around the planet who'd be very interested in getting their hands on that thing. So let's hope we find it very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. You have a great day.
Thank you, Drew. Really appreciate the call and the history lesson. That's crazy, isn't it? The guy ejects out of a plane, then it gently lands in a cornfield. A lot of luck in that arrangement. Just everything. The landscape needs to be just right. You need probably a lot of corn to accommodate that. Just a wild story. Wild stories being served up by the government today. They're asking the public for help locating an F-35. Hey, where is it? Kevin's calling in from Virginia, line 5. Kevin, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. I really appreciate Buzz's comments as a professional, but I think maybe the question that needs to be posed is, was this intentional? It seems, far outside the bounds of reason, but given things that have happened with commercial pilots committing suicide on airliners, a flight attendant opening a door and pulling a slide and jumping out of an aircraft, I'm beginning to wonder if the pressure was too great, if there was a mental health problem with he or she, the pilot, and that this might have been intentional because the facts are so peculiar.
Yeah, they are peculiar. I mean, look, if it was, I will say that the moment you mentioned that it could be like a suicidal effort, wouldn't you just crash the plane if you were trying to commit suicide rather than pump the ejection? But then again, I guess if you're having a mental break, it's hard to attach rationale to a decision like that. But yeah, more questions than answers, Kevin. This is a big mystery, and you wonder, like, what happened? The plane was still in autopilot, he ejected out, and then what?
Well, it reminds me of a case when I lived in San Diego decades ago. There was an F-14 pilot who murdered his roommate over a girlfriend rivalry, a romantic rivalry. And I kept thinking to myself, why would you do that to yourself, to your career? You've just attained the highest level of, flight professionalism in the world, and you want to throw it away for that?
Well, how cute was she?
Well, she was very attractive, apparently, but that's still nothing.
No, you're right.
That a person would lose their mind to the extent that they would make a terrible decision like that.
Yeah.
But given how many pilots are, under enormous stress these days,
no question,
the fact that they did a stand down suggests that they're more worried about the pilots generally.
There's something going on. Kevin, thank you. Good call. Very good call. Yeah, we'll keep tracking it. I'll be on the lookout. They should offer a reward or something. If you see the plane, you make some money. That'd be fun. We can. And I love the government doesn't tell us about Chinese spy balloons. We have to see them in the air. Oh, there they are. What's that thing? The jets, they're asking for our help. Nobody's going to spot it.